103 million people just woke up inside a severe weather risk zone on Father's Day morning. 2 storm systems are converging on the eastern United States this week, and the first one arrives tonight. The upcoming pattern across the country is about to deliver weeks of intense weather from coast to coast. And what you are looking at right now on this map is a level of storminess that does not quit. The Mid-Atlantic is catching the worst of it for today, but the central states already took their hit overnight. Now take a look at these wind shear values on the map right here. This is where the danger lives. And for tomorrow afternoon, the highest wind shear sits directly over the northeast, exactly where 72 million people live. Those numbers right there, 60 to 70 knots of bulk shear from 0 to 6 kilometers. That is more than enough shear to produce straight-line winds strong enough to bring down trees and knock out power. And look at this jet stream right now. See how it is blowing relatively flat from west to east. When the jet runs flat like this, you still get storms, but they tend to stay disorganized and short-lived. But watch what happens tomorrow. That flat pattern is about to change dramatically. See that the jet stream starts to dip down and curl into a hook shape by tomorrow afternoon. That U-shaped dip tells you the trough is digging, it is getting stronger and pulling energy down from Canada. And notice this jet streak developing right over the eastern Great Lakes and into the northeast. When a jet streak sets up like that, storms at the surface organize fast and the wind damage potential jumps. And here is the temperature side of this story. Look at how violent this cool down is going to be. This is the leading edge of an air mass that is going to crash temperatures 15 to 20 degrees below normal. It has been in the 90s and low hundreds out there, and we are about to drop straight into that kind of temperature crash. Does not happen gently. It happens with thunderstorms and severe wind on the leading edge. And by Monday, when the storms pass, the cold air settles in, and the entire eastern half of this is the pattern that is driving everything a positive PNA, with high pressure locked across the western United States. That western ridge is acting like a wall, pushing the trough deeper into the east and making the cool down even more intense. And it is not just enforcing the cold, it is squeezing the jet stream southward. So you end up with the west baking under a ridge and the east getting hammered by a trough But that is not the only system to track. Look at this spin developing down in the Gulf of Mexico right here. That area of rotation is going to pull tropical moisture northward and slam it into the southeast by the middle. And here is your severe weather risk for tomorrow, a level 2. Slight risk covering the entire eastern seaboard. Charlotte, Raleigh, Greensboro, you are right in the heart of this threat zone for Sunday afternoon and evening. And it extends north through Virginia all the way up into the D.C. metro and the Mid-Atlantic corridor. Atlanta sits on the marginal edge. Charleston, Columbia, and Wilmington are also included in the southern portion of this risk. The Outer Banks, the upstate of South Carolina, nobody in the eastern third of the country gets to sit. And the SPC is already watching next Wednesday for a possible upgrade. 72 million people in the yellow zone, another 30 million riding the marginal line. Right now, the jet stream is parked up through the northern states, and that is keeping the worst weather to the west. But that changes tomorrow. Look at how the energy starts shifting east as the trough amplifies over the Great Lakes. You can already see storms firing across Missouri and Kansas on this model run. And as we go through tomorrow, that jet streak starts developing and the severe weather zone migrates straight toward the east coast. This is round 1, the storm that hits the mid-Atlantic and northeast by tomorrow evening, and it is bringing everything with it. But round 2 is already visible in the models for next Wednesday, and that one could be even more impactful. Tomorrow morning, if you are going to church or grocery shopping on your Sunday, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Oklahoma are dealing with the leftover storms through the morning hours. But by the afternoon, everything accelerates east as the jet streak builds over the Great Lakes and northeast. That jet streak is the engine. It creates lift in the atmosphere, and that lift is what triggers explosive. And this is only the opening act, round 1, of what is going to be a very long week of severe weather. The latest SPC outlook tags 72 million people inside the slight risk, the widest June coverage so far this year. By tomorrow evening at 8 p.m., look at this thunderstorm activity stretches from the four corners, and it is not just scattered cells. You can see organized clusters developing along the Gulf Coast and into the deep south. The southeast is getting hit from multiple angles, thunderstorms along the front, and additional activity from tropical moisture to the south. And notice that hook shape forming in the trough again. That is the jet stream digging even deeper as the trough keeps digging, and you can see the winds responding to it in real time on this upper level map. That jet streak is parked right over the Midwest, Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago, all sitting directly under the fastest upper-level winds. And those upper-level winds are going to translate down to the surface inside of thunderstorms. Look at the strength of this jet. By early next week, this is a belt of wind that is 30 to 40 knots of effective shear are confirmed across the mid-Atlantic. That is more than enough to support organized damaging clusters. As those storms develop inside this strong wind belt, the winds get pulled down to the surface through rain-cooled downdrafts. And there is even a tornado threat embedded in this setup. Parts of the mid-Atlantic have enough shear for brief QLCS spin-ups. But further south toward the Carolinas, the wind shear drops off and the threat shifts more toward raw instability. Take a look at the instability forecast for tomorrow afternoon. It is highest from Virginia southward through both Carolinas. Instability values above 2,000 joules per kilogram are forecast across the Virginia and Carolina Piedmont. That is serious storm fuel. It is absolutely scorching across the southern states right now, and all of that heat is building explosive instability. This map shows you the different SPC risk levels. Dark green is marginal, yellow is slight. The darker the color, the higher the confidence that severe weather will occur. Severe weather does not always obey the lines on a map. Storms can and do fire outside the highlighted. Even if you are in the marginal risk zone, a single storm in this environment carries enough energy to. The isolated severe threat extends from the Carolinas coastline all the way inland to the Appalachian foothills and beyond. And now look at the enhanced risk zone level 3, where the most concentrated severe weather is expected to unfold today. Rain is going to grab those upper-level winds and slam them down to the surface through violent downdraft channels inside. That mechanism is how you get 60 to 80 mile-per-hour gusts from storms that do not even look that impressive. And the Ohio Valley, the Midwest, and the Northeast, including major cities right along the I-95 corridor, are all in the crosshairs. By Thursday of next week, that same jet stream dip sends another round of severe weather through the exacts. 2 separate watches covered southeastern Kansas, 19 counties in Missouri, and 9 counties in Arkansas overnight before sunrise. And there is more. Take a look at this second cold air mass that is already lining up behind the first one. A third pulse is charging down from the Arctic behind that, and this one looks even more potent than... This is directly from the Arctic, and when I say Arctic, I do not mean typical Canadian air. This type of persistent polar intrusion into the eastern United States in June is highly unusual. It usually shuts down by April. The fact that models are showing 3 consecutive rounds of Arctic air in the middle of summer is genuinely rare. Severe warnings hit 5 Missouri counties overnight: Berry, Christian, Lawrence, Stone, and Taney, with 75 miles per hour gusts confirmed. The tropical moisture surge is going to target parts of Georgia, Alabama, and possibly South Carolina and the Florida Panhandle by midweek. Models disagree on the exact placement, but every single run agrees that someone in that corridor gets hammered with extreme rainfall. And this is going to happen simultaneously with the second severe weather round. Severe storms from the north and tropical flooding from the south, with millions of people caught directly in the overlap zone. The European model paints a foot of rain from Christine's remnants across parts of East Texas. Catastrophic flood potential, if that verifies. And here is why this pattern will not quit. The cold air does not just pass through, it recycles. Watch this on the map. It moves north, circles back through southern Canada. That recycling motion is what keeps feeding new rounds of severe weather every 3 to 4 days for the next 2 weeks. The SPC risk map reflects this slight risk. Enhanced risk, these categories keep appearing because the atmospheric pattern keeps reloading. Some of the worst severe weather this spring and summer has been concentrated right here in the plains and Midwest. A flood watch is active across southeastern Kansas and Missouri right now. For day 2, Sunday the 14th, the Mid-Atlantic takes center stage as the primary severe weather target across the nation. Thunderstorm risk, marginal risk, and a slight risk are all stacked across the eastern seaboard from the Carolinas to southern New England. And then for day 3 on Monday, the pattern calms down briefly as the Arctic air mass settles in. Monday will actually be one of the quietest days of the entire week. The models today are showing this Arctic intrusion even more prominently than they did yesterday. The signal is getting stronger, not weaker. Monday's risk drops to just marginal across eastern New Mexico. Only 280,000 people. Looking at the model runs from today, Saturday the 13th, you can see the clusters of thunderstorms already. The worst of it is happening right here across Kansas and Missouri, exactly where the overnight watches and warnings were issued. And these storms are not just producing rain, they are producing rotation in the atmosphere that feeds directly into the MCS that hit Springfield overnight. Was textbook backward C-shape on radar, hurricane-force gusts, and it ran for hours without weakening. When you see that rotation translating east, that is the energy that tomorrow's mid-Atlantic storms will feed on to intensify. That connection between today's Central Plains violence and tomorrow's East Coast threat is what makes this a truly continental-scale weather event. The I-95 corridor from Washington to New York to Boston, every major city in that strip faces some. Strong winds are going to be the primary concern along that corridor. And look at the GFS model precipitation. It shows heavy rain spreading across the Ohio Valley and into the Some areas that are already saturated from this weekend's storms are going to see additional 2 to 3 inches layered. The Weather Prediction Center has a moderate risk level 3 for excessive rainfall across southwestern Missouri with 6 to 8 inches cumulative. The GFS and European models agree on the overall pattern, but they differ on where the heaviest rain sets up. The GFS spreads more precipitation northward across the Midwest and Ohio Valley. The European keeps the heaviest totals across the Deep South. But both models are locked in on this by Wednesday. Another powerful jet streak sets up right across and that jet streak on Wednesday looks even stronger than the one driving today's severe weather. Here is the Wednesday setup. The jet streak starts over Nebraska and runs right through Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio. Chicago, St. Louis, Kansas City, all 3 major metro areas sitting directly under the axis of and those winds amplify even further as we go into Thursday. Look at the strength of this jet moving. The middle of next week's storm could be even more impactful than this weekend's events. SPC issued an extended outlook 5 days in advance for Wednesday, Kansas City through St. Louis to Indianapolis to Cincinnati, all flagged. Before we wrap up the severe weather, the tropics also need attention because that Gulf spin ties directly into wind shear values kick up hard again by Wednesday right here into the Ohio Valley from Chicago through Illinois and Indiana. And that wind shear combined with returning instability as warm air surges north is going to create another round of. The long-range outlook keeps the central and eastern states active with thunderstorms for at least another 10 days beyond this week. And the southeast is not going to be spared. The models keep throwing storms into that region as by late June, the pattern shows a ridge trying to build back in across the central states. The East Coast is going to be one of the most active weather corridors in the country through the rest of June. That ridge across the western and central states keeps the heat building out west. And every time the trough reloads, another blast of Arctic air drops south and triggers a new cycle of. The temperature anomaly map is going to look wild. We will look at that shortly, but the severe weather picture comes first. Even areas out toward Texas are going to see strong storm chances tomorrow. And this evening, most of the active weather is concentrated right here over Arkansas, Missouri, and Kansas. By tomorrow morning, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Oklahoma are dealing with the tail end of tonight's storms. Most of the activity stays to the west through the early hours. And now the temperature story, because Arctic does not just mean cold. This air is not ordinary Canadian air. It is sourced from the true Arctic. Houston will not reach 90 degrees on Monday in mid-June, and that alone tells you how powerful this frontal boundary truly is. And you can see it right here on the model, a continuous train of cold air moving south from. That cold air is going to keep pushing south through Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday before the first round starts to. But by then, the storms are already working into the East Coast. That is a quasi-linear convective system, a QLCS. And it is setting up to sweep from Ohio all 40 knots of front parallel shear behind the cold front that is the ingredient that organizes scattered cells into a continuous squall line. And the QLCS is the storm mode that produces the widest swath of straight-line wind damage, more annual destruction than tornadoes nationwide. Here it is moving through the northeast. You can see the line stretching from Ohio up through Maine, hitting. The brunt of that squall line targets the northern portion of the risk zone. And behind that line, the Arctic air continues to pour into the eastern United States with no signs of stopping. This is not your typical June cool down. This air is coming from way up north, and it is potent. The models are trending even colder today than they were yesterday, which means the temperature crash could be even. Overnight lows in the 40s are possible across parts of the upper Midwest before June ends 40s. And look at this belt of wind shear stretching from Chicago through Ohio and Michigan and into the Northeast by Thursday. There is even a low-level jet building in here, which adds another layer of wind energy that can get. By Thursday, the Northeast faces a second round of severe weather driven by this exact same mechanism all over again. Now, for the Carolinas, the wind shear is lower down here, which means the severe threat is more marginal. The Ohio Valley and Northeast are going to bear the brunt of the organized severe weather. Looking at the European model, the northern jet stream is very amplified heading into next week, and that spin creates severe storms across the Ohio Valley and Northeast, but then look at what is happening down. Zooming into the southeastern United States and the Gulf, there is that area of rotation trying to organize tropical moisture. That Gulf spin is not going to become a named storm, but it is going to act as a instability. Values over southern Texas and northern Mexico are running above 8,000 joules. And wherever that moisture surge makes landfall, the flash flooding potential is going to be catastrophic for communities in the impact zone. The trough is going to start retreating northeast toward Greenland by midweek, but it does not go quietly. As it retreats, warm air pushes back north, and that creates intense thunderstorm boundaries right along the temperature gradients. And that boundary zone where the warm air meets the retreating cold is where Wednesday's severe weather outbreak sets up. Wednesday, June 17th could be one of the most turbulent days of the entire month across the central and eastern United States. The temperature gradient between the warm and cold air masses is so extreme that stationary fronts could develop. And SPC's Day 6 outlook already flags Thursday the 18th across the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic. The pattern just keeps recycling itself. The rainfall picture adds another layer of concern on top of the severe wind threat across the eastern states. Virginia and North Carolina might actually see less rain than surrounding areas. But do not confuse less rain with safety pop-up storms tomorrow, and squall-line storms early next week will... The confidence is lower for heavy rain totals in the Carolinas compared to areas further south and west where every model run this week has shifted the heaviest rainfall axis slightly, so the exact bullseye remains a moving target through midweek. But somewhere between Houston and the Alabama coastline, a multi-day rainfall event is going to produce flash flooding that. The communities in that corridor need to be watching forecasts very closely from Tuesday through Thursday. The European model all the way through next Saturday paints the heaviest rain across eastern Texas. Look at those totals piling up. And down into Florida, afternoon sea breeze convection adds even more rainfall on top of an already saturated landscape. But the primary severe weather driver remains the wind shear, and for tomorrow, the daily chart shows heavy rain and flash flood risk painted from Oklahoma through Arkansas. The 60 to 70 knot shear values in the Northeast are the highest anywhere in the country tomorrow. And look at this, by next weekend, Sunday the 21st into Monday the 22nd, the cold pushes back into the central states. This is still the second cold air mass working through, and it is being followed by yet another one. 3 rounds of Arctic air in June, each one setting up another severe weather cycle on its leading edge. 103 million people, 2 storm systems, 3 Arctic blasts, and 1 atmosphere that is not done punching.